having some questions on relevant cash flows, as well as we'll also be discussing some scenario type questions about decision making using relevant cash flows, right? Questions, some of the type of questions are similar to what may appear in your case study questions. You won't get exact questions like this, but based on your case study, based on the scenario within the company that is given to you in the case study, you may be asked similar questions where you have to interpret the situation and identify the relevant cash flows and make decisions or suggestions based on that. All right. Can you guys quickly do TFQ1 and put the answers on the chat box? This is a very simple question. This is about what we did yesterday in theory, a question based on that. Scenario A says that the salary to be paid to a market researcher who will oversee the development of a new product. The new post is to be created especially for the new product, but the £12,000 salary will be fixed. Is this cost relevant to the decision to proceed with the development of the product? Right? Can you guys quickly say whether this £12,000 salary is a relevant cost to the decision of proceeding with the development of the new product? Are you guys there? You can hear me, right? And you all can see the question on the screen. Okay, this £12,000 is not relevant. Now, yesterday we discussed that all variable costs are relevant costs and some fixed costs are relevant costs. Not all fixed costs, some fixed costs are relevant. Now, even though this £12,000 salary is going to be a fixed cost, they have mentioned here this new post is to be created especially for this new product development. That means if we don't proceed with the development of this new product, then we don't need to create this new role for market researcher, which means that £12,000 will not be spent, right? So it's an additional cash flow incurred as a direct consequence of the decision that we made. Therefore, the £12,000 salary is an attributable fixed cost, meaning it's a relevant cost. Scenario B, £2,500 additional monthly running costs of a new machine to be purchased to manufacture an established product. Since the new machine will save on labor time, the fixed overhead to be absorbed by the product will reduce by £100 per month. Are these costs relevant to the decision to purchase the new machine? Right? So there are two types of costs that we are talking about here. The 2,500 additional monthly running costs and saving of 100 pounds per month, fixed overheads to be absorbed by the product. Right? Can you guys quickly put on the chat whether these two costs are relevant? For scenario B, what's the relevant cost? What's the total relevant cost for scenario B? Now in scenario B, there are two types of costs. You have a 2,500 pound additional monthly running cost and a 100 pound savings. So either you have to put separately whether each one is relevant or not relevant, or you can put the total relevant cost for scenario B, the number. Guys, these are very simple questions. What you will get in your exam will be more complicated. If you can't answer these questions, it will be difficult when you go to scenario type decision making related questions in relevant costing. Please try these questions out and put the answers in the chat box. There are 12 students here. Only one person has given some answer. Right, look guys, now if we buy this new machine, our monthly expenses are going to increase by 2,500 pounds. Right? 2,500 pounds additional monthly running costs of the new machine. Therefore, this 2,500 is a relevant cost because it's an additional cost that you will incur every month as a consequence of making the decision to buy the new machine. But this 100 pounds is an absorbed cost, right? It's a fixed overhead that is absorbed into the product, right? Now, what did we discuss yesterday about absorbed costs? Those are, anyway, you are going to incur the total amount. It's just that the way you are accounting for it differs. Therefore, you know, can you remember we spoke about a company which has 3 departments, A, B, and C, and their total fixed costs are apportioned to these 3 departments, and then you start a new department D, and now you are apportioning your total cost to department D as well. But in reality, in actual in real life, the total cost you are incurring does not change. The way you are apportioning it is what changed. Therefore, this 100 pounds per month is not a relevant cost. This 2,500 pounds is a relevant cost because it's an additional expense that is incurred as a direct consequence of the decision to purchase the new machine. Therefore, in scenario B, your total relevant cost will be 2,500 pounds. Look at scenario C, office cleaning expenses of 125 pounds for next month. The office is cleaned by contractors and the contract can be cancelled by giving 1 month's notice. Is this 125 pounds relevant to make a decision to close the office? Scenario C, guys, can you all put answers for scenario C, whether the 125 pounds is relevant or not? Okay, some people are saying not relevant. Now look at this, read this question carefully, guys. If you want to cancel the contract to uh, contract for the cleaning services obtained, you have to give them 1 month's notice, right? That means if you tell them today, you have to, you can, it's till end of March. If you give them notice today, you have to obtain the services in April, and then thereafter you can cancel it, right? You have to give them 1 month's notice. So for the next month, you have to pay. For April, you have to pay. That is what this £125 £125 fee is for, right? So that is a committed cost, right? You have already agreed that after you inform them that you are going to cancel, the following month's fee will be paid. This is the same scenario like the one we discussed yesterday about laying off an employee, right? Where you hired a person for a 1-year contract and in 7 months you are laying him off, right? The remaining 5 months salary you had to pay because it's a committed cost, right? Same way here, right? Since you have to give them 1 month's notice, right? It's a committed cost. Committed costs are not relevant, right? Even if you make the decision to close the office, next month's fee will be paid. If you don't make the decision to close the office, still you sorry, not to close the office, to cancel the contract, right? Whether you make the decision or whether you do not make that decision, you will have to pay for the next month, right? For the month of April, you have to pay, right? Which means either way, this £125 is going to be paid, right? Your decision is not going to change that, right? Therefore, that expense is not relevant to your decision. Right. Now yesterday we did the question about cement and special paint. Let's quickly do this question today. You guys can see the question, right? The PDF. Now they have given us details about 4 types of material, A, B, C, and D, right? And they have given how many units you need, how many units are there in your inventory, the book value of the unit, the realizable value per unit, that is realizable value is basically scrap value, the amount for which you can sell whatever is in your inventory, right? And they have replacement cost. Replacement cost is basically the market price of the material, right? Now you have a customer who has come and asked you for a special job, and he is willing to pay $22,000. Right now you have to see whether you are going to accept this order or not, right? Now how would you see whether you are going to accept this order or not? If the total expenses that you incur are lower compared to what? You compare your expenses to what, to see whether something is worth undertaking, whether a project is worth undertaking. Guys, come on, there needs to be more interaction. You compare it to your price, right? If your costs are going to exceed this 22,000, because that's the amount that your customer is willing to pay. If your costs are exceeding 22,000, you won't undertake the project. But you don't take the costs, you take the relevant costs, right? Only the costs that you will incur additionally as a direct consequence of doing this project, right? So let's just assume that all of your employees are paid a fixed salary, right? Whether they have work or not, and you have spare capacity. So your relevant cost of labor is going to be zero, right? You don't, because you're anyway going to pay them, right? Whether you undertake this project or not, they are going to get paid. But material is not like that. You have to let's see how things work for material based on the information given here, right? Now look at material A, right? You need 1000 units of material A to make this product, and there is none of it in your inventory. That means the only option that you have is to buy the material from the market at $6 per unit, right? So relevant cost of material A is $6 into 1000 units, $6,000. That's the relevant cost of material A. Does anyone have any problem with this? Right? Since you don't have any units of material A in your inventory, you have to purchase it from outside at $6 per unit, which will cost you $6,000. That's your relevant cost of material A. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, one person has said yes. How about the others? Right, okay, thank you. Material A is okay. Now look at material B. Material B, again, you need 1000 units, right? You have 600 units in your inventory, right? That means 400 units you have to purchase from outside, right? That is for sure, because you need 1000 units, you have only 600 units. That means 400 you have to purchase, no? So 400 units into $5, that is anyway relevant, because that's the amount that you're going to purchase from outside. Now this remaining 600, 400 you have purchased from outside. This 600 you have to see whether you need it for anything else. So for that, they have given us a point here. Material B is used regularly by DLN, and if units of B are required for this job, they would need to be replaced to meet other production demand. So this is like yesterday's cement scenario for the construction company, right? It's a material that business is going to use on a daily basis. So if you use up what's in the inventory, you have to replace it, right? So you have to, if you are going to replace it, you have to use the replacement cost, that is the market price. $5 into 600 will also be relevant, right? So the 400 units that you're going to buy from outside and the $600 units that you're going to replace in your inventory, all of it will come at $5 per unit, right? So your relevant cost of material B will be $5,000, right? Hope that is clear to everyone. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Now looking at material C, again you need 1000 units, 700 units you have in your inventory. That means 300 you have to purchase from outside at $4, just like for material B. So 300 into 4 is a relevant cost, right? Then we have to check whether we need this 700 units for anything else, right? For that, they have given a point here. Material C and D are held as the result of previous overbuying, and they have a restricted use. That means you can't use it on a, that means your company does not need it on a regular basis. You don't have to replace it, right? For B, they said it's a regularly used material. So if you use it for this, then you have to replace it. But for C and D, that's not the case. No other use could be found for material C, right? Let's come to material B later. But for material C, they have said no other use at all. It's not regularly used, and there is no other uses also for material C. So the only thing that you can do with these 700 units in your inventory is you can sell it for scrap at $2.5, right? So the relevant cost of material C will be the 300 units that you are purchasing from outside into $4, right? Which is the replacement cost, plus the 700 units in your inventory into the realizable value of $2.5, right? Anyone has any problem with that? Okay, great. So that's clear. Now we are moving on to material D. You need 200 units. You have 200 units in your inventory, right? And they have told you that this material is held as a result of previous overbuying and it's not used on a regular basis. So you don't have to replace it. Right now, let's check whether there is any other use. The units of material D could be used in another job as substitute for 300 units of material E, which currently costs $5 per unit, right? So unlike C, for D, we have another use now, right? Where you can use it instead of 300 units of E, which will cost you $5 per unit. That means now material D, you can do two things with it, right? One is you can use it instead of E. Otherwise, you can sell it for scrap. If you sell it for scrap, you will get $6 into 200 units, $1,200. You will get if you sell it for scrap, right? So if you use the 200 units for this project, right, then $1,200 is like an opportunity cost, right? You can't sell it for scrap and get that value, so it's like an opportunity cost. Now there is another thing that you can do with D, right? You can use it instead of E, which costs $5 per unit, right? So that means if you use this 200 units in our project, you have to buy E, 300 units of material E at $5, right? That's $1,500. Now, which is higher, 1,500 or 1,200? 1,500 is higher. So that will be your relevant cost. Because if you don't use material D in our project, you will use it for one of two things: sell it at scrap or use it instead of material E, whichever gives you the highest value. Highest value is given by using it instead of E, right? So that will give you a relevant cost for material D of $1,500, right? Is that question clear, guys? Is the answer to that question clear to everyone? Right, you have the answer to PFQ2 here, right? The relevant cost of A, B, C, and D. If anyone has any problems with that, quickly put it on the chat box. I'll give you a few seconds to go through the answer. Right, okay. So I hope that is clear. Let's move on to the next question. Right, PFQ3, this is a very simple question. Let's quickly do this. A company is considering a short-term price decision for a contract that would utilize some material P that is has held inventory for some time. The company does not foresee any other use for the material. The work would require 1,000 kilogram of material P, right? That means there is no this material is not used on a regular basis, that means you don't have to replace it, and there is no other use. You can't use it in any other production, which means there is no opportunity cost in that sense. Right? Now let's keep reading. The work would require 1000 kilograms of material P. There are 800 kilograms in the inventory, which were bought some time ago at a cost of $3 per kilogram. Right now, is the $3 relevant? It's not relevant. It's in the past. It's a sunk cost, right? $3 into 800 units, that's sunk cost. We are not worried about it. It's not a relevant cost. The material held in inventory could currently be sold for $3.50 per kilogram. Right now, that is relevant because if you don't use that material in your current project, you can sell it for scrap at $3.50. Right? So that's an opportunity cost, right? 800 units in your inventory into $3.50, right? Since you don't have any other use for this material, there is no other opportunity cost, but this $3.50 into 800 will be your opportunity cost, right? But now wait, you need 1000 kilograms of material for this project, but you have only 800 kilograms in the inventory, right? The relevant cost of those 800 units is 800 into 350 is the relevant cost of those 800 units, but you need another 200 units, right? Those 200 units you have to buy it at the market for $4.50, right? So 800 units into $3.50 plus another 200 units into $4.50, 3,700 will be your opportunity cost for material P. All right. So that's again a very similar question to what we did earlier. So I hope everyone understood that. Right. Then take a look at TFQ4. You have 100 hours of unskilled labor needed for a contract. The company has no surplus capacity at the moment, but additional temporary staff could be hired at $4.50 per hour. The relevant cost of the unskilled labor on the contract is, guys, can you quickly put the answer to this? Quickly put it on the chat. You need 100 hours of unskilled labor. You don't have any surplus capacity. Additional labor can be hired at $4.50. So what is the relevant cost of unskilled labor for this contract? Quickly make the calculation and put it. It's not difficult. Yes, right? Because the only option you have is to hire additional employees from outside. So it's 450. Now look at the next question. 100 hours of semi-skilled labor is also needed, right? This is at the moment you have 300 hours worth of spare capacity. So do you have enough spare capacity to meet this demand? Yes, you need only 100 hours and you have 300 hours of spare capacity. There is a union agreement that there are no layoffs. That means whether you have work or not, you have to pay those employees for the 300 hours worth of spare capacity. Workers are paid $6.50 per hour. What is the relevant cost of semi-skilled labor? Guys, we have now moved on to the second part of that question. People who are saying $450, that's correct for the first part of the question. Second part, now we are looking at 100 hours of semi-skilled labor. $6.50 is the wage rate. Currently, you have 300 hours of spare capacity with a union agreement that says there are no layoffs, right? So what is the relevant cost? Relevant cost is zero, because whether you have work or not, you have to pay these employees at this wage rate. So whether you make the decision to take the contract or not, their payment is not going to change, right? and you have 300 hours of spare capacity, that means 300 hours without any work, and you need only 100 hours for this contract. So out of the 300, you can take 100, and you don't have to pay anything extra because the employees are anyway getting paid, right? TFQ5 we did yesterday as an example. TFQ6 also we did yesterday. Let's take a look at TFQ7. A machine which cost $10,000 4 years ago has a written down value of $6,000. Written down value is cost minus depreciation, right? And the depreciation to be charged this year is $1,000. There is no alternative use for the machine, but it could be sold now for $3,000. In 1 year's time, it will be unsaleable. I think we did this also yesterday, and we saw now we are not purchasing a new machine, right? To do this project, you already have the machine, right? So it's not that that machine has to be replaced or you have to buy a new one or anything like that, right? But the historical purchase cost is not relevant. It's a sunk cost. Depreciation is a non-cash item. Therefore, it is not a relevant cost, right? The only relevant cost is that if you don't take up the project, then you can sell this machine today for $3,000. That's an opportunity cost. So the opportunity cost of using the machine to undertake the new project is $3,000. All right. I'm getting some people are saying something on the chat. Right, there are people. Okay, Neil. Yes, there is no. That is, I think you have. You're talking about the previous question for TFQ7. You have a $3,000 opportunity cost. The foregone opportunity to sell the machine in the second-hand market, right? Is everyone clear with that? We did this question yesterday also. Right, let's quickly take a look at TFQ8. TFQ8 is a long question. So I'll quickly read this, and one by one we'll discuss the scenarios. DLW is a company that builds innovative, environmentally friendly housing. DLW's houses use high quality materials, and the unique patented energy saving technology used in the houses has been the result of the company's own extensive research in the area. DLW is planning to expand into another country and has been asked by a prominent person in that country for a price quotation to build them a house. Right now, guys, when you are building a price, when you are giving a price quotation, like we discussed earlier, the price that you quote has to at least cover the relevant cost, right? And on top of that, if you want to make a profit, then you can add a target profit or a profit market on top of the relevant cost and quote your price. Otherwise, your price has to be a minimum of minimum that equals your relevant cost, right? Anything below your relevant cost, you're making a net negative contribution, right? Because you're incurring some costs as a direct consequences of making the decision to undertake a project, but you're getting paid less than that, right? That's a loss, right? You shouldn't go for that. You should reject that opportunity, right? So now price quotation. The board of directors believes that securing the contract will help to launch their houses in the country and have agreed to quote a price for the house that will exactly cover its relevant cost. Now these guys are saying, since now if we do this one project, then we will get more projects in that country. So we will do it as cheap as we can. And the cheapest price that you can quote is what, guys? The relevant cost of undertaking the project. So they have the board of directors have agreed. All right, let's quote a price that is exactly equal to the relevant cost of building the house. So now we have to calculate what the relevant cost is, right? So number one, the chief executive and marketing director recently met with the potential client to discuss the house. The meeting was held at a restaurant and DLW provided food and drinks at a cost of $375. Now, what's the relevant cost in that scenario? Quickly put the answers in the chat. Guys, quickly put the answers. How much is the relevant cost in scenario number 1? Not scenario, point number 1. Is this $375 relevant? Hello? Guys, are you all there? See, the chief executive and marketing director recently met with the potential client. It's already done. It's in the past. So anything that you have already spent for is a sunk cost, right? Sunk costs are not relevant costs because they're already done, right? Whether you make the decision or decision to do the project or not do it, you can't change what happened in the past. It's already done. Therefore, it's not relevant. Point number 2, 1,200 kilogram of material Z will be required for the house. DLW currently has 550 kilogram of material in its inventory, purchased at a price of $58. This $58 is the historical purchase price. It's not relevant, right? It's a sunk cost. Material Z is regularly used by DLW in its houses and has a current replacement cost of $65. The resale value of the material is $35 per kilogram, right? Guys, can you all quickly calculate what the relevant cost is and put it in the chat? If you have 550 kilograms in your inventory, you need 1,200 kilograms. Replacement cost is $65 per kilogram, and the market value is, I'm sorry, not the market value, the resale value is $35 per kilogram, right? And this is a material that is regularly used in DLW's business, right? So what is the relevant cost? Somebody is saying 69,600. That answer is wrong. You have 550 kilograms in your inventory, right? Now that inventory is regularly used, right? Material Z is regularly used by DLW. That means if you use it, you have to replace it, right? Because it's like cement in a construction company, right? So you have to replace it at $65 per kilogram, right? That's the replacement cost. 550 into $65, right? Now the remaining amount, you need 1,200 kilograms, no? So you have only 550 in your inventory, right? So the remaining amount you have to purchase from outside, right? Now how much will that cost you? That will also cost you $65, right? Because if you have to purchase a material to replace it in the inventory, to use it also, the market price is still $65, no? So that will also cost you $65. $65 into 650 kilograms, right? So your replacement cost of 550 into $65 plus the purchasing cost of $65 into 650 kilograms will be $78,000, right? Anyone has any questions on that? If anyone has any doubts, didn't understand anything on point number 2, please put in the chat. Please drop a message in the chat if you have not understood anything on point number 2, relevant cost of materials. Right, moving on to point number 3, 400 hours of construction worker time are required to build the house. DLW's construction workers are paid an hourly rate of $22 under guaranteed wage agreement and currently have spare capacity to build the house. So what is the relevant cost, guys? They have spare capacity. They have spare capacity and right. So what is the relevant cost in point number 3? It's zero, right? Because whether you do work or not, you have to pay, right? That expense is not going to change. That cash flow is not going to change as a direct consequence of your decision. Therefore, the relevant cost for this point is zero, right? I will explain point number 2 again because somebody has put on the chat to explain it again, right? Material Z, you need 1200 kilograms. You already have 550 in your inventory, but you have to replace that if you use it because it's a regularly used material. They have told you that it's regularly used, right? Material Z is regularly used by DLW, right? So you have to replace it. Your replacement cost is $65. Right now, you have 550 kilograms, but you need 1200. So the remaining amount, 650 kilograms, you have to buy from the market. Now, the replacement cost is basically the market price. So that 650 kilograms also you have to buy at $65. So technically the entire 1200 you have to purchase, right? 650 new purchase, 550 replacement of inventory that you used, all at $65 per kilogram. So $65 into 1200 kilograms, the answer will be 78,000. Point number 3, relevant cost is zero. Point number 4, the house will require 90 hours of engineer time. DLW engineers are paid a monthly salary of $4,750 and they do not have any spare capacity. In order to meet engineering requirement for the house, DLW can choose one of 2 options. Now, if you don't have spare capacity, point number 2 answer is 78,000. Now, if you don't have spare capacity for labor, there are 2 things that you can do. You can either hire additional labor. Additional labor can include new hires or overtime payments, right? Or what you can do is you can tell your current employees who are doing other work, right, to stop that work and come and work on this new project, right? So either you can hire, if you have spare capacity, then all good. If not, you can either hire extra labor or you can transfer employees from current work to this new project. So DLW also has those 2 options. One is to pay the engineers an overtime rate of $52 per hour, right? And or either that or they can transfer them from this other work where they are building product Y, right? Now, product Y, they have given information regarding the sales and the variable cost and how much time is needed to build 1 unit of product Y. Now, what happens when you transfer people from one work to another work is you lose contribution on the work that they were transferred from. Now, in this case, if you transfer engineers from product Y to this new housing project, the contribution you earn from product Y in the given 90 hours will be lost. So when you have 2 options, right, whether to pay them overtime or whether to lose contribution on project Y, you will choose which one, the one that costs more or the one that costs less. If you have 2 options, which option will you choose? The one that costs more or the one that costs less? Obviously the one that costs less, right? So you have to calculate the relevant cost of the two options and then go with the lower cost option, right? So can you quickly guys calculate the relevant cost for point number 4? How much? First let's calculate what will happen if we go for the overtime. If you decide to go with option 1 to pay the engineers overtime, because there is no spare capacity, so you either have to hire additional labor, or you have to transfer employees from an existing project, that is product Y. So if you pay them overtime, what will be your relevant cost? What's the relevant cost if you pay them overtime? Guys, that's easy, right? You need 90 hours of labor, right? At $52. $52 per hour. You need 90 hours. So $52 into 90 hours, that's 4,680. 4680 is the 4680 is the relevant cost if you go for the overtime option. Otherwise, if you transfer people from product Y, then you will lose contribution. Now, per unit of product Y, you need 30 hours to make, right? Engineer's time required per unit is 30 hours. Now, for this project, this housing project, you need 90 hours. So how many products of Y can you make in 90 hours? 3 units, right? Because one takes 30 hours. So in 90 hours, you can make 3 units. Now, what is the contribution earned from 1 unit of product Y? Contribution from 1 unit of product Y. How do you calculate that? Sales minus variable cost, right? 4860 minus 4860 minus 3365, right? That's 1495 per unit. 1495, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's 1495 per unit. In 90 hours, you can make 3 units. So your opportunity cost there will be 4,485, 4485, right? Now, earlier we saw the overtime option is going to take overtime option is going to take the overtime option is going to take 90 hours into $52, 4,680. Loss contribution from product Y, 90 by 30, which will give you the number of units, 3 units. This is contribution per unit, which is 1,495. Your opportunity cost there will be 4485, which is lesser 4680 or 4485, which is lesser 4,485, right? So you will choose, instead of getting additional labor, that is, instead of paying your engineers overtime, you will choose to transfer them from their existing work of making product Y, because that is cheaper for you. The relevant cost of that is lower, right? Let's move on to the yes, transfer is better. Let's move on to the next point. Point number 5. A specialist machine would be required for 7 weeks for the house build DLW have 4 weeks remaining on the 15-week specialist machine rental contract that costs $15,000. This $15,000 already spent is a sunk cost. It's already done. No point thinking about it now. The machine is currently not in use, right? That means now you have 7 weeks remaining. In the remaining 7 weeks, if you use this machine for this new project, there is no problem because you are not going to miss out on anything else. You have already paid for it. You don't have to pay anything additional for the remaining 4 weeks. I'm sorry, not 7 weeks. 7 weeks is the total that you need, but you have only 4 weeks remaining, right? The machine can be rented for an additional 15 weeks at a cost of 15,250. The specialist machine can only be rented in blocks of 15 weeks. So you can't rent it for 3 weeks. Now for 4 weeks you're sorted because you already have rented a machine and 4 weeks is remaining on the rental, on the rental contract. But you need altogether 7 weeks to build the house. So you need another 3 weeks. So there are two options now. One is you can either rent the machine paying 15,250 for another 15 weeks, right? Because you can't rent it for just 3 weeks. They give it only on a 15-week basis. So you can either do that, or you can purchase an entire machine for 160,000, right? You can purchase to own it. And then after the work is done, you can sell it for 140,000, right? So your effective cost will be $20,000 there, right? Because you're buying it for 160, and then after your work you're selling it for 140. So which is the better option? To rent it, right? To rent it for, because 15,250 is less than 20,000. So renting it is a better option. So your relevant cost in point number 5 is 15,250. Point number 6. The windows required for the house have recently been developed by DLW and use the latest environmentally friendly insulating material. DLW produced the windows at a cost of 34,950 and they are currently the only ones of their type. DLW were planning to exhibit the windows at a house building conference. The windows would only be used for display purposes at the conference and would not be for sale to prospective clients. So they have made this new type of window which they are going to present at a conference. DLW has had assurances from 3 separate clients that they would place an order for 25 windows each, right? That means 75 windows in total, if they saw the technology demonstrated at the conference. So if you don't go for the conference, you can't sell it to these clients. The contribution from each window is $10,450, right? So from each window, the contribution is 10,450. That multiplied by 75, because 25 windows and into 3 clients, that's a contribution of 783,750, right? The total contribution. So if you don't go for this conference, that contribution you won't get, right? Because if you don't go for the conference, then your clients won't buy from you. If the windows are used for the contract, DLW would not be able to attend the conference. So what they're saying is, if you accept the new housing project and use these windows there, then you may lose this contribution. The conference organizers will charge a penalty fee of 1,500 for non-attendance by DLW. So if you don't go for the conference, you have to pay the organizers $1,500. The chief executive of DLW can meet the clients directly and still secure the orders for the windows. So now they are saying, even if you don't go for the conference, you can still manage to sell. So that contribution we calculated earlier, it won't be lost, right? Even if you don't go for the conference. So the only relevant cost if you don't go for the conference is $1,500, which is a penalty payment, right? The meetings would require 2 days of the chief executive's time. the chief executive is paid an annual salary of $414,000 and contracted to work 260 days per year. So to go for this meeting, do you have to pay the CEO anything extra? No, you don't, because he's on a fixed salary and a contract to work 206 days. So he can take 2 days out of that and go for this meeting, right? So the only relevant cost of undertaking this project is the $1,500 you have to pay the conference organizers for non-attendance, right? The penalty fee, right? Any questions on this? Is there anything that you didn't understand in how we categorize these expenses as relevant and non-relevant? Right, one person has said that everything is clear. Any questions of why this is a relevant cost and why this is not, or anything like that? Okay, point number 8, DLW's fixed overhead absorption rate is $37 per construction work hour. So there it's an absorbed fixed cost, right? So absorption cost we don't take as relevant. So there is no relevant cost there. The relevant cost there is 0. Point number 9, DLW's normal policy is to add a 12% markup to the cost of each house, right? So normally what you would do is you would add up all the relevant costs from each point that we discussed and then add a 12% markup. But in this question, right at the beginning, we saw that they are going to quote a price. They are going to quote a price that is exactly equal to the relevant cost. That will exactly cover the relevant cost. So in this question, that markup will be 0, right? Even though their normal policy is to charge a 12% markup, for this question, it's 0 because they have already said that they are going to quote a price that will be exactly equal to your relevant cost. Right. Moving on to PFQ number 9. This company has, they are selling electronic security systems. So things like CCTV cameras and things like that. Right. They have 3 products, day scan, night scan, and omniscan. Right. And they have given the cost of each product. You have the material cost, then you have the manufacturing labor cost and the installation labor cost. Then you have variable overheads, and they have also given the selling price. Fixed costs for the period are $450,000, and installation labor, which is highly skilled, is available for 25,000 hours only, right? And is paid $8 per hour. Now, guys, in this question, you need to understand a concept called limiting factor, right? That means when you are producing something and if one of the resources are not enough to cover the demand for that resource, then that resource will be a limiting factor, right? So usually when companies produce things, the usual limiting factor is demand, right? So let's say, for example, now day scan, the maximum demand is 2000 units, right? So you can't produce 2000 units, there's no point, right? So companies will make a maximum of 2000 units of day scan because that's the maximum demand. So that's a clear limiting effect, limiting factor, right? But here sometimes you may have some other resources like materials or labor or some other resource that will act as a limiting factor. Now let's try to calculate. Now they have told us installation labor available amount is only 25,000 hours. How many hours of installation labor do we need, right? That is something we have to calculate and see, right? So they are given per unit how much we need. Right, so let's take a look at that. So the total hours needed, the total hours available is 25,000. But you need for day scan, you can produce 2,000 units, and your labor installation labor charge is $24 per unit, right? Now this per unit charge you have to change into how many hours you need, right? They have given in dollars, no? So now we have to find out how many hours that will translate into, right? They have given per hour the charge is $8. So for day scan, you need 3 hours to make 1 unit, and you can make a maximum of 2,000 units. For night scan, you need 4 hours. $32 divided by $8 is 4 hours, and you can make a maximum of 3,000 units. And for OmniScan, they have given you need $44 to make 1 unit. That means you need 5.5 hours, 5.5 hours, right? And you can make a maximum of 1,800 units, right? So 2,000 units into 3 hours plus 3,000 units into 4 hours plus 1,800 units into 5.5 hours, you need 27,900 hours in total installation labor, but you have only 25,000, right? So you have less resource than you need, right? So that is a limiting factor, right? Is that clear? In a question like this, step number 1 for you to do is to identify what the limiting factor is. Now in this question, they have made it easy for us and already given what the limiting factor is. So we just need to confirm by doing this calculation. But if they didn't say what the limiting factor is, and they just gave us the available hours and the available material for all of these, right? Like materials, manufacturing labor, installation labor, we have to do this for each resource and identify what the limiting factor is, right? Is anybody does anybody have a problem with identifying the limiting factor, or here recognizing that installation labor is a limiting factor where you have a resource that is the availability is less compared to the requirement, right? Does anyone have any problem there? Right, now step number 2 is, now when you are making a product, what is your ultimate goal? What is the what are you going to achieve by making and selling a product? Can you quickly put in the chat box what that is? Why would a company manufacture a product and sell it? In this case, why would this company? Yes, you want to make profits, right? Yes, you want to make profit maximization, right? So now we already have the fixed cost. No, fixed cost is anyway fixed. So what do we need to maximize? If we maximize our contribution, then we will be able to make profit, right? Because fixed cost is going to be fixed. No, sales minus variable cost is your contribution. So if you maximize your, if you can get the, right? So yeah, you have to, right? People are saying yes. So basically you have to get the best contribution that you can, right? So for that, we are going to calculate the contribution per unit for each product, right? You take the selling price and you deduct all your variable costs, right? So that is what they have done here. right? 250 minus all of these costs for your day scan, that is $100 per unit, and for night scan 103, and for OmniScan that's 163, right? Now the problem is, now if all your research were adequately available, what you would do is you would start producing uh, uh, this product OmniScan, because that gives you the highest contribution, and then you would produce N, right? That is night scan, and then day scan, right? Or if even if your resources are limited, if you need an equal amount of resources for all of these, still you would be okay, right? You can produce it in this order. But look at this, day scan needs 3 hours to make for one, you need 3 hours to make one product, right? But that's giving a low contribution. Night scan, it's giving a slightly higher contribution, but you need 4 hours to make, right? So you have to use a little more of your limiting factor, the limited resource, to make that product. OmniScan, it gives you the highest contribution, but you need 5.5 hours to make 1 unit of that product. To get this $163 contribution, you need to spend 5.5 hours of your limited resource, right? So now in step 3, what you do is you calculate contribution per limiting factor, right? So now you see day scan, your contribution per unit is $100 divided by 3 hours to make 1 unit. It contribution per hour is $33.33. For night scan, $103 is the contribution per unit. You need 4 hours to make. So contribution per limiting factor, that is contribution per hour in this question, is 25.75. For OmniScan, it's 29.64, right? Now you see which product gives you the highest contribution per limiting factor, because once your limiting factor is over, you have to stop production, right? So based on that, day scan is giving you the highest contribution per hour. The second highest is OmniScan, third is night scan, right? Is everybody clear up to this point, right? How we rank the products in terms of contribution per limiting factor. Can you guys put a yes if you all are clear? If you are not, please drop whatever questions you have in the chat box. Anyone with any questions, please ask in the chat box what you didn't understand. If you all understood, can you put a yes? Okay, 2 people have said yes. How about the others? Anyone who didn't? This is an important question. These type of questions you will get for your operation, and you may get for your operational case study exam, where you have to decide whether to how to allocate your limited resource between products, which product to make first, which to make second. Okay, some people have said yes. Anyone who didn't understand anything, if you have any questions so far, please put that also, so I can clarify any doubts you have up to now before moving on to the next section of this question. Okay, so somebody is saying, can you explain from step 3? Now what we have done is, now in step 2, we calculated contribution per unit, right? So Dayscan is earning you a contribution of $100. Nightscan $103 and Omniscan $163 per unit. But see, to make now, if you look at only this data, you will obviously prefer to make Omniscan rather than Dayscan or Nightscan because the contribution is higher. But to make 1 unit of Omniscan or to earn $163 of contribution, you have to spend 5.5 hours that we calculated in step number 1, right? That 5.5 hours is needed to make 1 unit of Omniscan. How did we calculate that? We went to the information given here. Installation labor cost of Omniscan is $44. Wage rate is $8 per hour. So we need 5.5 hours, right? So now if you have unlimited labor hours, then obviously you will go with this order, right? Because you can spend whatever hours you have on hours you need for Omniscan, then the next one for Nightscan, and then for Dayscan. But here your number of hours is limited. So you have to maximize the contribution that you can make per hour, right? Per limiting factor, right? So now in the next step, what we do is we see what's the contribution per hour, right? So for Dayscan, the contribution per unit is $100. You need 3 hours to make one. So $33.33 per hour, right? Same way for Nightscan, $103 per unit divided by 4 hours needed to make 1 unit, 25.75. Omniscan, same calculation will give you 29.64. So based on this, the highest contribution per hour is for Dayscan, second highest is for Omniscan, and Nightscan is third, right? I hope you understood it now. If there is any questions, put a message in the chat, right? So after that, in step 4, we decide how to go about making this product. So we have 25,000 hours available in installation labor. We have to make, first we have to start by making the Dayscan product. The maximum number of units that we will make in Dayscan is 2,000, right? Because in the question they have given, maximum demand for Dayscan is 2,000 units. So if we make anything more than that, we can't sell, right? Because demand will be exhausted. So to make 2,000 units, right, per unit will take 3 hours. So you will have 6,000. 6,000 hours will be needed to make Dayscanners. Then the remaining is 19,000 hours. Out of that, you will make rank number 2 Omniscan. You will make 1,800 because that's the maximum demand. 5.5 hours per unit. 9,900 hours will be exhausted for that. You will have 9,100 hours remaining, right? You can use that to make your Nightscan, which is the third product. The maximum number you can make is how much? Nightscan is 3,000, but you can't make 3,000 because you need 4 hours to make 1 unit. If you make 3,000, you need 12,000 hours, but you have only 9,100. So using that 9,100 hours, right? How many units can you make? 9,100 divided by 4 is 2,275. So at the end of the day, you will make 2,000 units of Dayscan, 1,800 units of Omniscan, and 2,275 units of Nightscan. If you do that, in step number 5, you can calculate your profit. How do you calculate your profit? Your total contribution minus fixed cost. Total contribution is 2000 units of product D into contribution per unit. That's what we calculated in step number 2, right? For day scan, it's $100. So 2000 units into $100 for day scan. Then for night scan, 2275 units into $103 per unit contribution. Then for OmniScan, 1800 units into $163 contribution per unit. This is your total contribution, right? What we calculated so far. This will give you your total contribution, right? You deduct your fixed cost of $450,000, which is given in the question. This will be your total profit, right? That's how you have to do this question. So you will be asked to maximize profit, how to, what product mix you will use if they give you a limiting factor, right? Does anyone have any questions of what we have done so far? Guys, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box. Anyone else? Any, if you have any questions? Right, okay. So since no one has any questions, let's move on to the next question. TFQ 10. Right, let's try TFQ 10. RT produces two products from different quantities of the same resources using a just-in-time production system. The selling price and resource requirements of each of the products are shown below. Now, this data is similar to the previous question, where your selling price is given. Direct labor, they have given the number of hours, and material A and B also, they have given the quantity with the unit price as well, right? Same story for machine hours. Market research shows that the maximum demand for products R&T during June 2010 is 500 units and 800 units respectively. So they have given the maximum demand also. This does not include an order that RT has agreed with a commercial customer for the supply of 250 units of R and 350 units of T at selling prices of $100 and $135 per unit respectively. So this is outside of your market demand and your market prices. This is a separate contract that you have entered into to produce and supply this number of units at these prices. Before supplying to the market, you have to fulfill the requirements of this contract, right? So these 250 units of R and 350 units of T, you have to supply, right? That is a contract that you have agreed into. Although the customer will accept part of the order, failure by RT to deliver the order in full by the end of June will cause RT to incur financial penalty. So they're basically saying you can't refrain from satisfying the contract. At a recent meeting of the purchasing and production managers to discuss the production plans for RT, the following resource restrictions were identified. So this is the maximum number of units for each resource that you will have. Assuming that RT completes the order with the commercial customer, that is this 250 units of R and 350 units of tea contract that you entered into. Prepare calculations to show from a financial perspective the optimum production plan for June 2010 and the contribution that would result from adopting this plan. Right, guys. Now, before we do the question, can you identify what the limiting factor is? Right, they have given you the maximum. They have given you the contract, the number of units that you are going to supply to the commercial customer. Then they have given you the maximum demand for R&T, right? And they have given how many units of each resource will be used for products R&T, and they have given the available number of units also, right? So this is in tutorial number 12. I'll give you guys like 2 minutes, right? Can you quickly identify what the limiting factor is? Right? Can you identify what the limiting factor is and put it in the chat box? This question is there in tut number 12. Right? Guys, give me just 1 minute. You'll do the question, identify the limiting factor, and people who have identified the limiting factor, y'all can continue doing the rest of the question. Just give me 1 minute, I'll be back. Sorry about that, guys. So did you identify what the limiting factor is? So now to do this, you have to calculate how much of each resource that you need and how much is available, right? Now, let's try direct labor, right? Now, how much of product can you make the maximum number? 250 units for the contractor and 500 units for the market, right? That's 750, right? You need 3 hours of labor, right? 3 hours of direct labor for each unit of product R. So that's what we have given here. Then look at product T. You need 350 to fulfill the contract, and you can make 800 units for the market. That's 1150 units, and you need 5 hours for each unit, right? 5 hours for each unit, right? That's what's given here. Now, if you solve this equation, you will get 8,000, which is your required number of labor hours to fulfill the maximum demand. But you have only 7,500 hours that they have given here, right? 7,500. So you need 8,000, but you have 7,500. So labor is the limiting factor. Now in this question, we were lucky. The first thing that we looked for is the limiting factor. But sometimes, now let's say for example, this answer was 7,000. Then you have 7,500 available, but the needed hours is only 7,000. No? So then that's not the limiting factor. You have to move on to the next resource and calculate, and like that you have to check for everything else, right? But in this question, we have already found the limiting factor, it's labor, right? That's step number 1, to calculate what the limiting factor is, right? This is similar to the previous question, guys. You calculate what the limiting factor is. Sorry, not calculate, you identify what the limiting factor is by calculating the needed units of resource. Then you calculate contribution per unit for the products that you are making, right? To do that, you have to calculate the cost. So now for our direct labor will cost 3 hours into $8 per hour, right? Then material lay 5 kilograms into $3 per kilogram, you put it here. Material B 2 liters into $7, and machine hours 3 hours into $10. That's what's here, right? Each of these you have to deduct from the selling price, which is given here, to get the contribution per unit. Same thing you have to do for product T, right? 5 hours into $8, 4 kilograms into $3, 1 liter into $7, 4 hours into $10. You have to deduct each of these from $160, which is your selling price. It will give you contribution per unit, right? Now, step number 3, you have to calculate contribution per limiting factor, right? So product R needs 3 hours. This direct labor is your limiting factor. So 3 hours of direct labor is needed. $47 contribution per unit divided by 3 hours, $15.67 per hour. For product T, $61 per unit divided by 5 hours, 5 hours is needed. You have $12.2 per labor hour, right? So $15, this is product R is number 1, product T is number 2. This is all, like up to this point, it's the same steps that you have to follow from the previous question, right? Guys, you can see the answer, right, on the Word document. It's the same steps as the previous question. You guys can see the answer, right? Can you see the answer? Right. Do you have any problem up to now on the steps that we followed? It's the same steps as the previous question. Okay. So now in step number 4, when you're allocating your resources, now in the previous question, what did we do? We took the product rank number 1, product like the product with the highest contribution per limiting factor, and produce the maximum out of it. But in this question, we can't do that because we have entered into an agreement with a commercial contractor that we will supply 250 units of R and 350 units of T. So first we have to produce these two, right? No matter what. There you don't worry about the ranks. You have to do this because you have entered into a contract with it. So to produce R 250 units of R, you need 750 hours because per unit uses 3 hours. And for T 350 units, you need 1750 hours. So if you deduct those two from the 7500 hours that is available, you get 5000 hours. After this only you start allocating the number of hours based on the rank of the product, right? So rank 1 is product R. Maximum demand of product R is, as per the question, 500 units, right? They have given it here. You produce 500 units, you need 1500 hours. Remaining hours is 3500. Maximum demand of product is 800. But to produce 800, you need 4000 hours. You have only 3500. So in 3500, how many units of T can you produce? 3500 divided by 5, 700 units. Right? Now you have to calculate the total contribution, right? Now remember guys, in your contract, your selling prices are little different, right? To the market, you sell are at $130, but to your commercial customer, you're giving it at $100, right? So you have to separately calculate the contribution for these two, right? So here you have to calculate your contributions per unit from the contract separately, right? So what they have done here is you can do this from the beginning, $100 minus, each of the costs. But what we have done here is we already calculated the contribution per unit for the market, no, $47 for product R. So we have taken that $47, and then we have taken the difference in the selling price and deducted it because we are selling it for a lesser price. To the market, it's at $130. To the commercial client at $100. So the $30 difference. Now contribution is selling price minus variable cost, no? So since you are selling at a lower price, you have deducted that difference. Same thing you have done for product T also, and got a contribution per unit by that you can earn by selling to the commercial customer. So 250 units into $17 plus $350 into 36 plus the 500 units of R that you made for the general market. That contribution we calculated in step 2, $47. 700 units of T at $61 contribution. Your total contribution is $83,050, right? So that is the question they have asked for, the total contribution, right? If they had given you the fixed cost, then you could have deducted the fixed cost. You could have deducted the fixed cost from the total contribution and arrived at a profit as well, right? Any questions on this question, right? This is one of the complicated ones that you can get. If you understood this, then you have understood much of relevant costing. We have one more question to do from your tute that is also related to relevant costing, that is about shutdown decisions. But before that, I want to make sure that you understood what we did so far. Which part? I didn't get the contribution part. Can you repeat which part? Is it the last? This point is the last point. Okay, this last point. Now earlier what we did is, once we identified the number of units for each product, we just we basically multiplied that by contribution per unit and arrived at the total contribution. But here the problem is, these 250 units are sold at a different price to these 500 units, right? Both our product are, to the general market you are selling at one price, to the special contract, in the special contract you are selling at another price. So because you have two different selling prices, the contribution for these two sets are different. So the contribution per unit in the general market we calculated in step number 2. But the 250 units that you are selling to the contract, selling to the special client, that you have to calculate separately. So what they have done here is they have taken the contribution that you already calculated and they have deducted the difference in selling price because you're selling it at a lower price to the special customer. They have deducted that difference and arrived at the contribution per unit from contract, right? So that 250 units into $17 is contribution of product R from the contract. This 500 into 47, that is contribution of product are sold to the general market, right? Okay, did you understand that? Same scenario for product T, 350 units is sold at a lesser price. So we have taken the contribution from step 2, deducted the difference in price and arrived at a contribution from contract. Is that understood? Can we move on to the next question? Okay, I will move on to the next question after, right, okay, that's good, okay. Since you have got it, let's move on. If anybody has any questions, or if it's not clear, the recordings will be made available to you. You all can go and watch it again, and then next week when we meet again, you can ask me any doubts that you have, right? Next, we will look at TFQ number 12 in your TUTS. This is about this is called make or buy decision. So basically, if you are making a product, right, and you have two options. You can either make your components in-house. Say for example, you are a mobile phone manufacturer. You can manufacture the battery in-house, or you can buy it from an outside party. Now, can someone quickly tell me when you will buy it from the outside party instead of manufacturing in-house? Quickly put it on the chat. When buying from an outside party is better than manufacturing it in-house? Come on guys, can someone put on the chat when you will buy a component from a third party rather than you making the component yourself? When the third party is selling at a price that is lower than your relevant cost, right? It compared to your in-house manufacturing cost, right, which is basically the relevant cost of making that product. If the third party is selling at a lower price, you will buy from the third party, right? So in TFQ 12, they have given the information for 4 components, L, M, N, and P, right, which are incorporated into different products. All the components are manufactured using the same general purpose machinery, right? So they have given what the production cost for each component is: direct material, direct labor, variable overhead, and fixed overhead. Right now, fixed overhead, if they have not specifically told, then you have to take it as an unavoidable fixed overhead. Right? If they have specifically told that it's avoidable, then that becomes a relevant cost. Right? And they have given the purchase price from outside supplier, and they have given the number of hours needed to make each component also. Right? Now, manufacturing requirements show 1,500 units are needed for each component. That's like the maximum demand in the previous question, right? The maximum units you will make is 1,500 for each unit, and the total machine hours available is 24,000. Now, first we have to see Now first we have to identify whether this machine hours is limited, right? For that we have to see. Now there are 4 components now. So for each component, they have given the number of hours, and they have given how many hours is needed, right? Now let's quickly like a note, we'll quickly look at it, right? Compare between the cost of purchasing and the cost of making in-house. If nothing is mentioned about fixed overheads, we assume it is unavoidable and it should be ignored, right? So that's what I mentioned earlier. If avoidable fixed overheads are given as a total for each component, compare between the total relevant cost of making and the total relevant cost of buying. If per unit values are given, then compare the per unit cost of making and the per unit cost of buying. Now guys, let's try and identify whether it's better to make any of these units in-house or to buy, right? For that we have to calculate the relevant cost. Calculating the relevant cost is easy. You just add up the relevant expenses. Now we already told that fixed overhead, if they have not said anything, then we have to consider it as unavoidable. So we have to add these 3: direct labor, direct material, and variable overhead to come up with the relevant cost of manufacturing in-house, right? That's how these figures are got, right? Then cost of purchasing they have given in the question, right? So that also we have put here, right? Now when you look at this, all of these products, it's cheaper to make in-house rather than buy from outside. So the decision is make, right? Making in-house is cheaper than buying from outside. Right now, if all of these are easier to buy from outside rather than make in-house, then the question is finished here. Your answer is you have to pay $57 and buy L, $55 and buy M, and so on and so forth. But now, since it's better to make in-house, right, you have to determine whether production is possible, right? Whether there are any limiting factors. So here, what we have to do is each unit 1,500. Each component you need to make 1,500 units, and they have given how many machine hours you need to make these products, right? So you can easily calculate the total machine hours needed. This is same as the previous questions, guys. You need 27,000. Available machine hours only 24,000. So now you have a limiting factor. So now what do you need to do? You need to calculate. What's the next step, guys? Can someone quickly put in the box? Step 1 is identifying the limiting factor, which we have already done. We have checked whether there is a limiting factor. Yes, there is machine hours. What is step number 2? Guys, can you put in the chat box what step number 2 is that we discussed in the previous 2 questions? We had to see yes, contribution. We calculated contribution per unit, but here there is no contribution. What acts like a contribution? What are we trying to see? Now there it was, we were selling the products, so selling price minus the variable cost, we got a contribution, the relevant cost. But now here, what are we trying to do here? Why are we making in-house rather than purchasing from outside? Savings, very good, right? So now we have to identify savings per unit, right? Cost saving per unit, right? Or here they have directly calculated for the limiting factor. So cost saving per unit you can easily calculate by deducting the cost of deducting the cost of making from the cost of purchasing, and then for each unit, then it's the same steps as before. You need to divide it by the number of hours, and you have to rank them based on savings per limiting factor, right? So that's what they have done here. They have ranked the products based on savings per limiting factor, right? So then it's the normal the normal step that we followed in the previous question. You have 24,000 hours. Rank number 1, you make 1,500 units of product 10, which needs 4 hours per unit. So that's 6,000 units. You have 18,000 remaining. Then you make 1,500 of product P, 9,000 hours. Right? Similarly, you do the first 3 products. Then for the last product, you see if you can make 1,500 units, you can't, you don't have enough hours. So for 4,500 hours, you check how much of product 10 you can make, 900 products. The remaining 600, you will have to buy from an outside party, right? Is that clear? Does anyone have any doubts? Is that clear? If anyone has any questions on that. Okay, that's good. Okay. Right, let's take a look at the last question for the day. This is about shutdown, right? Now guys, just like, so we already looked at what the minimum price of a product has to be, whether we are going to accept or reject an order, right? We will reject the order if the proposed price is less than the relevant cost of undertaking the project. Then we just looked into and then we looked at the product mix based on maximizing contribution per limiting factor, and we just now saw make or buy decisions, right? Whether to make a component in-house or to buy it from a third party. Finally, we are going to take a look at shutdown decisions. Shutdown decisions can be for a business, for a branch, for a particular department, or for a product. Right now, in this question, they say Fiona company is considering the closure of one of its operations, department 3. Right now, guys, they have given the number of units of sales. They have given the sales revenue, cost of sales. They have given direct material, direct labor, and production overhead. Then gross profit, other expenses, and net profit. Right now, they are planning on closing department number 3. Now, why do you think they are closing department number 3? Can someone quickly put on the chat box why a Fiona company might be considering closing this department? Come on, guys, that's a very easy question. Someone could be answering the chat box. Guys, it's probably because the net profit is negative, right? This department is making a loss, so they are planning to close it, right? But do we make decisions based on net profit? No, we make decision based on net contribution, right? Net contribution is sales minus variable cost minus avoidable fixed cost. Right now, let's take a look. Direct material is probably avoidable, so probably variable, so that's a relevant cost. Direct labor also probably variable. We will see. Production overhead can be variable, can be fixed. We don't know yet, right? So to know whether these costs are relevant or not, we have to take a look at these additional information they have given, right? Production overhead of $15,000 have been apportioned to the 3 departments on the basis of unit sales volume. Now, if you close one department, right, does that mean this $15,000 will change? No, it won't change, because $15,000 is fixed cost, right? They have just apportioned it to the departments. That is this $15,000, right? This is an apportion cost, right? If you close one department, they will just apportion it between the other 2 departments. The actual cash flow will not change, right? Expenses are head office overheads, again apportioned to department on sales volume. So again, it's a portion cost. That won't affect. But if you keep reading on, they have given more information regarding these costs. 50% of production overheads, right? That is 50% of this $15,000, 7,500, can be directly traced to departments. That means avoidable fixed costs, right? And can be allocated on the basis of 2:2:1, right? So you have, it's this 15,000, out of that 7,500 is the 50%, right? 2:2:1. So department 3 incurs $1,500, right? Similarly, 60% of the expenses can be expenses in the sense these head office overheads can be allocated 3:3:2. The remainder cannot be allocated like that. So this $7,500, the other 50% is unavoidable fixed cost. Out of the 40,000 expense, 40,000 is the total expenses that are incurred, right? This 40,000. Out of this, 60% is 24,000 that can be avoidable, directly allocated to departments on a 3:3:2. So for department 3, right? Now 3:3:2 means 3 plus 3 plus 2 is 8. You divide this by 8 and multiply it by 2, which is the portion that is allocated to D3. It's 6,000. Then third point, 80% of the direct labor is fixed and cannot be readily allocated. Now, although we usually say direct labor is variable, here they have said 80% is fixed, right? Only the 20% is variable, and this can be allocated on the basis of sales volume, right? So sales volume is number of units, right? So that is what we have done here, right? You have direct labor is $63,000. Out of that, only 20% can be variable. That 20% is allocated. Your total number of units is 13,000. D3 sells 2,000, right? This should be 2,000, right? Because department 3 sells only 2,000. $12,600 divided by 13,000 into 2,000. That will be 1,938. Right? Sales unit is 2,000. Based on sales volume, they have allocated it. So this should be 1,938. Right? The rest of it is fixed. Right? So now if you check, guys, your net contribution is, right, 24,000 in sales, right, minus all your relevant costs. This will be your net contribution, right? That is sales revenue minus minus your variable expenses minus your avoidable fixed costs. right? So what's your sales revenue? It's 24,000. Then your direct material 10,000 you can take away from that. Then expenses 6,000 you can take away. Then you have your avoidable production overheads, that is 1,500 for this department, and direct labor, the avoidable cost is 1938, right? This will be 1938. 938. So now if you make the calculation, let's see how much we get there. Right, we are getting 4,562. 4,562. That means this department is making a positive net contribution, right? That means your sales minus relevant cost is positive, right? Minus variable cost minus avoidable fixed cost is positive, in which case you will not need to close this department. If you close this department, that means you are losing that positive net contribution. All right. So guys, just to run through a quick summary, a 2-minute summary of what we did today. We looked at minimum pricing decisions, right? The total relevant cost of completing the order will be your minimum price. You can add a profit markup on top of it. Accept or reject decisions, right? When should an order be accepted by a company? When the selling price quoted is higher than the total relevant cost, right? Now, if your company is usually, if there is a minimum profit that you are targeting, then the price quoted has to exceed the total relevant cost plus the expected profit, right? Then we saw make or buy decision, right? When you are deciding whether to make a component in-house or to buy it from outside, if your purchase cost is less than your total relevant cost of production, then you can buy from outside. Otherwise, if your total relevant cost of making is lesser, then you produce it internally. This is on a financial basis, right? Now, if you look here, there are some non-financial factors you may have to consider, like the quality of the product, the reliability of the outside manufacturer, because sometimes so you have to see, even if somebody is cheaper, whether you can rely on them to continuously make a product, right? Flexibility of the supplier and the impact on company reputation, like if the third party manufacturer, the supplier is ethically producing, whether you will have any reputational issues and things like that. But from a financial perspective, what we discussed is how you make them, how you decide on whether to make in-house or buy outside, right? Then limiting factor decision making, we saw how to prioritize the products and come up with a product mix so your contribution per limiting factor is maximized. So we did questions on that. Shutdown decision is what we saw, the last question that we discussed. The decision that you make is based on foregone revenue and incremental cost savings from the closure, right? Whether you can save whatever cost that can be saved and the revenue that you lost. So if the department is currently making a higher revenue than your relevant costs, then it's better to keep it, right? But there may be some non-financial factors again there to consider, like employee morale. Like if you close a department and fire employees, then the remaining employees may also be fearful of being laid off in the future, right? There may be legal implications, there may be reputational effects. You may have to consider those. But from a financial perspective, relevant costing is how you decide on whether to shut down a department or not, right? Then we did these questions. There are some qualitative factors. I already discussed this when discussing the other decisions. You can read through these when the presentation is shared with you. Just a quick note on the conflicts with financial accounting. Now think about, now in the last question we saw, even though that department is making a net profit loss, right, based on financial accounting, we still decided that it's better to leave it open, right? So because in relevant cash flow calculations, we consider the impact on cash flows, right? Not based on apportion costs and things like that, right? The impact on profit is not highlighted. Then think about depreciation, non-cash items in financial accounting, they consider those. But in relevant costing, we don't, right? And sunk cost, right? When we are making relevant costing decisions, we don't consider historical sunk costs. But in financial accounting, when you are calculating the profit, you take those into consideration, right? So those are important. You can read through this, right? I have already mentioned these when doing questions and discussing the theory yesterday. Once the presentation is shared, you can read through the differences or other conflicts with financial accounting as well. And there are a few points about ethics in decision making. This is not directly related to relevant costing, but I have added these slides so it will be useful to you when you are doing your case study questions, right? When you are answering questions in your case study exam, these may be useful when you are discussing or writing descriptive answers on scenarios in the exam. So just read through this. These are not directly related to relevant costing per se, but I have just added these because they are related to decision making. All right, guys, that's about it. We have already run past our time limit. If you have any questions, please do these questions again. The answers will also be shared with you. Please try the questions again on contribution and relevant costing both. If you have any questions, you can come and ask me when we meet next week. The recordings will also be there. So if you don't understand anything, you can watch the recordings as well. I will wait for 1 more minute. If you have any questions, you can discuss that. But other than that, that's about it from me today. Hope you guys got something from this session. I'll wait for another minute. If you have any questions, you can put it on the chat box, or you can unmute and ask as well. I'm not sure about tomorrow's class. You have to ask about that from your coordinator or the lecturer who is taking the class. I will not be taking any class for you tomorrow.